As a biomedical researcher, you're probably used to tackling complex challenges. But when it comes to grant writing, are you navigating the process with the same level of precision that you do the other challenges? This question came to mind during a 4-day wilderness kayaking trip I was on the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in the remote mountains of Idaho. Surrounded by that rugged beauty of nature, I recorded a video to explore the parallels between the challenges of kayaking and those of grant writing. Unfortunately, the original video had some sound issues, but I was excited to share those insights, so I'm re-recording a video for you now. I'm Dr. Morgan Giddings, and I'm in my 50th year of kayaking, and I also have some grant writing experience as well. I spent over 14 years helping hundreds of researchers with their proposals. And really, this inspiration that I had, I realized that the challenges and strategies in kayaking have a lot in common with grant writing. They may seem totally different, but both require careful planning, skills development, and the ability to navigate through unexpected obstacles. So my friend Devin Barker was with me on the trip. She's a world champion kayaker, surf kayaker. They go out and surf waves, and it's pretty awesome to watch them. She's also an experienced kayak instructor, and her teaching has helped many people, including my own daughters. It served as an inspiration for the skills development process, and it really applies to how we learn and improve in the grant writing process. So then the question is, what are some of the key skills in successful grant writing, especially for biomedical researchers and engineers and other highly technical fields like that? There are a lot, but a key one that I want to mention and go into a little bit is this idea of writing for your reviewer, writing for your reader. This idea of writing so that your reader can relate to what you're writing is a deep and difficult to learn skill. That's because your ideas are not obvious to your reader. You know, we all have, as researchers, a deep familiarity with our own work. And that familiarity is great. It's part of what makes us successful researchers, but it also causes a big problem in the writing process, which is it leads to assumptions that we have and that we think that our readers have certain understandings about the work that we already have. So we're basically thinking, well, if I know this, then all of my readers know this too. But that often isn't the case. And so it's really crucial to bridge that gap in communication. They're often 3 or 4 steps behind us, not in their overall level of understanding of the field, but in our narrow niche of the subfield that we're in. We typically have far more understanding than most of the people who are going to be reading our proposal. And that gap in communication is critical. And it's a difficult skill to learn how to translate our own understanding into reader understanding for people who aren't at our level of understanding of our particular niche or subfield. The same thing happens in kayaking, where we have to deeply understand the environment of the river, the nuances of how the water moves and how our boat and our body will move within that environment so that we can go where we want to go, where it's safe to go, and avoid the things that are unsafe. One of the things that I see happen with novice kayakers is they might think that they can navigate the river easily. They look at it and they don't see those nuances. So they'll charge into it quite often without that understanding of the nuances, and they can get quickly into trouble. So one example of this was at the Gauley River in West Virginia. And this was back when I was a graduate student. I was leading a trip for the UW-Madison Hoofers Outing Club down the lower Gauley River. And it's a challenging intermediate plus level run. And I ended up chasing down 20 kayakers who had left their boat. That means in kayaking, we call that swimming. It's not a good thing when you leave your boat. Then you're a swimmer in this powerful river. Now we all wear life jackets, so usually it's okay, but it's not a pleasant experience to be repeatedly dunked under waves as you're being pulled down a river like that. And in this case, really the ego can get the best of us. It got the best of me. The many people that I helped that day when they were swimming, I helped rescue them, bring them to shore, get them back in their boat. They had thought, oh, this is no problem for me. I can do this. I can do it. It's great. Until they were in the water being thrown around by those waves. And then the questioning sets in, the doubt sets in. But that's once you're already in there. And really, it was ultimately my mistake as a leader to take some of those folks down that river who just weren't ready for it at the time. I was a graduate student. I didn't know a lot better. I certainly know better now. And they thought they could do it. That's the key thing. They thought they could do it. I see the same thing so often in grant writing for biomedical and engineering researchers. I can compare it to the frustration that happens when new grant writers really, they come along and they say, I can do this. I've done all of this other stuff. I've gotten these degrees. I got hired for this job. And so I'm ready. Maybe I had a grant writing seminar or class or two. So I'm ready. So they jump in. And the grant writing class or two are just like people who take a kayaking class or two. They're ready to do class 2 whitewater, maybe class 3 whitewater on a 1 to 6 scale. But the real intermediate starts at class 3 plus or in class 4. Same thing with grants. People dive in thinking, I'm ready for this. And they have a sort of no problem, figure it out as they go attitude. And the thing they don't realize is that just like whitewater on this rating scale, grants have become a class 4 and above game. What do I mean by class 4? Well, class 4 is advanced whitewater. It's not quite at the point of highly expert whitewater, which is class 5, but it's definitely advanced to be on class 4. And for those of us who've done it for quite a few years, class 4 is still pretty straightforward. But if you're a beginner or even an intermediate, class 4 has serious consequences. The grant writing is like a class 4 game at this point in time because there is so much competition and grants have become so hard to get. With 1 in 10 pay lines or 1 in 12 pay lines at some institutes at the National Institutes of Health, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And you have to be operating at least that advanced level to have a reasonable shot at it. So the consequences of sort of diving in and playing that game, that class 4 game, without the appropriate preparation and training, they're not as immediately obvious as kayaking, where you just go for a swim in the whitewater and immediately suffer these dire consequences. Yet, the consequences, even though not as immediate, are as serious in grant writing. Because frequent rejection really leads to a number of major problems, and those include a tarnished reputation. Really, it's okay to have a rejection here and a rejection there. People are forgiving about that kind of stuff. But when you are repeatedly coming back, especially to the same study section, rejected, 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 guess what? Reviewers start remembering. And they remember all those previous times they rejected you. And then they're going to be looking at your name. It's one of the first things they see when they open up your grant proposal for review. And they're going to be thinking, oh no, not another one from so-and-so, from such and such. I won't name any even made up names because I don't want to offend any particular person. I'm guilty as charged from back earlier in my career as a faculty member. Tarnished reputation, not a good thing. It diminishes your chances. And then further diminishing your chances is you get lower confidence and reduced morale over the whole thing. And it really impacts you, and you end up not feeling as good about the process. And the worst thing is then desperation starts setting in. And that desperation, It's a bad thing. It really makes your grant writing quality go down because you're so fearful. You're in a, I wouldn't say quite traumatized, but tending towards traumatized kind of state of mind. And you can't write and you can't think as clearly when you're in that state of mind. So your writing quality goes down. And the worst thing is that's a loop of rejection because your quality goes down. So then you're even more likely to get rejected. And then you get even more frustrated, you get even more fearful, and quality goes down further, leading to lowered confidence, frustration, and a rinse and repeat. Just like being on the river and getting sucked into what I call a hole where the water is recirculating and you're circulating back and forth. I've been in there and it is scary, and it can be scary in your career too. And I've been there as well. So we don't want that desperation because I've seen that in kayaking. Somebody who's had a few bad experiences in kayaking, they often get more anxious. And once they're more anxious in the boat, it's really weird, but you can see it in the way somebody kayaks. You know, they're holding a paddle, it's got two blades on the end, and they just get tense and very kind of jerky in their movements. And you can see that their head isn't in the game, and they are more likely to get into further trouble. They are less likely to make the lines that they need to make down the rapids, and they can really become a liability on the river. And that's not a good thing when that happens. The point is that being relaxed in a kayak is crucial to success. And likewise, being relaxed when writing and thinking about your research really improves the quality substantially. Having fun is a key part of the creative process. And if you're anxious, you're not having fun. It's no fun when you're in that mode. So another thing I want to address related to this whole analogy is that a lot of people think that funding decisions are random. So I want to talk about randomness for a minute. And a question I can ask is the randomness just a byproduct of rush? I think it often is. Rush and ill preparation. Or is it really that the system itself is random? Well, the way we can look at that with kayaking is that a lot of random things happen in kayaking. It's actually one of the things I love about the sport because I can go down the same exact rapid twice in a row and different things will happen each time because the water is always splashing and moving in somewhat different ways. Yeah, there are certain fixed features of the river, but the water is so fluid, and so it's ever changing. And with different water levels, things change dramatically, even on the same river. So on each day that I was on the middle fork of the Salmon River, I would have many unexpected waves that came and hit me hard. There was one wave that literally stood my 9.5-foot kayak vertically on end, fully loaded with gear, vertically on end, almost flipping over backward, but fortunately I didn't quite go that far. Okay, that was random. It was unanticipated. I thought I would just go through the wave, but it happened to peak and break at that particular moment in time when I happened to be on the wave. So you could call that randomness. So let's consider the difference between an inexperienced kayaker and what would have happened to them versus what happened to me. So an inexperienced kayaker, anybody who's class 1, class 2, or class 3 kayaker, hitting that wave would have most certainly flipped over backwards. Quite likely they couldn't have rolled up in the very turbulent waters behind that, and so they would have gone for a swim. And the water is moving very fast, and if you get separated from your boat in that kind of white water, it can be a very scary experience, especially since this was snow melt. So it was very, very cold water. Not a pleasant experience. And that is the likely outcome for anybody who is not an experienced kayaker. Basically amounting to a frustrated, cold experience. So one more thing about that, I've seen people give up the sport altogether when that happens. They get so frustrated. They're like, I'm done. This kayaking, it sucks. It's scary. Now let's contrast that to an experienced kayaker. Again, I've been doing it since I was pretty young. I'm not going to give the exact age, give away my age, but I've been doing it for about 50 years. I hit that wave. It stood on end. Even if I had gone backwards, it's very likely that I would have been able to roll up in the turbulence because I have practiced my roll for decades and can roll up in pretty difficult water. And I have learned how to not lose my mental space if I'm underwater in turbulence, to not freak out right away. I mean, it's still scary, even after 50 years of doing this, but I don't freak out right away. However, I was able to combine leaning with the appropriate paddle strokes so that I didn't even flip over. So it really was no problem. And so I didn't flip once during 4 days of running advanced class 4 whitewater in the cold, remote wilderness. Okay? So the same thing goes for grant writing. Like, you can say random things are going to happen to me, and it's true. You will get annoyed reviewers, negative reviewers, reviewers who seem like they're sleeping, and yet how you anticipate those problems, how you forestall those problems ahead of time, and then how, if nonetheless, if you succumb to those problems, like if because of one of those things you get a rejection, knowing how to take that and turn it into success, the experience makes all the difference in how that experience, how it goes for you. Really, rushing through the grant writing process is the number one way I have seen that creates a belief that the system is random, because you really are just rushing through the learning. You don't understand the nuances, so therefore it seems random. Just like that wave would have seemed random if I was less experienced, and it would have seemed very frustrating. It would have been just like, oh, well, this is too random for me. I can't do this sport. So the way to prevent this in kayaking and in grant writing is really taking the time to more deeply develop those skills. That learning process is really a step-by-step learning process. And I began that process for kayaking when I was, well, I'll say it, I was 5, and that was in a swimming pool with my father, and I had gotten a new kayak under the Christmas tree. It was an awesome gift. It was really a rarity at the time, like before anybody had really heard of what kayaks were. I mean, we're talking the early 1970s, and it took me many years to get to the point where I was confident in the more challenging whitewater. And so we're at a point with grants, like I said earlier, where we're in the challenging whitewater territory. There's just almost no grant mechanism I know of where it's easy waters anymore. I mean, unfortunately, but that's just the way the system is. I think I got really lucky with one of my first grants that was ever funded. It was a K-22, and I remember there were only 7 or 8 people who applied for that particular RFA, request for applications, and I was, I think, in the top 3. It wasn't a great score that I got, but it was good enough to get funded. So I thought, I'm great at this grant writing stuff. Well, it turns out when I joined the real competition that I was still a class 2 or maybe 3 grant writer when I got that one funded. And once I joined the real competition of like competing for NIH R01s, forget it. I was out of the league at that point. It took me a lot of rejections and then a lot of learning to get to the point where I could regularly bring those in. So with my grant writing, that turnaround happened by working with a mentor for 4 years. I think I've got the right number of figures, 4 years to get to the point where I didn't need that feedback. And in many ways, I was a quick learner when it came to this stuff. And I've seen clients take from 2 to 7 years or more to really master this, skill. And it's not just mastering the technical skills of grant writing, though that is critical. It's also mastering your own mind, your mindset, your functionality of how you approach things, how you see things. It's really mastering the fear and the anxiety. and overcoming that frustration that arises from rejection and unleashing your creative process to give the best ideas in your proposal. So really, proper training and education is key for experienced kayakers, so that we as experienced kayakers know how to handle those unexpected waves and things, and also understanding what our preparation is for being on the river, like having the appropriate preparation, especially if you're going out and doing wilderness, like 4 days in the wilderness without any roads, without any civilization, nobody to rely upon if you have a problem. That's important. Knowing your capabilities and limits is extremely important. And we have to become accurate in our self-assessment of our abilities. Otherwise, we don't make it very far in the sport. So trained grant writers are similar in knowing how to handle those unexpected challenges in proposals, knowing how to interpret rejections, and just really understanding what reviewers want to hear and need to hear at that particular part of the proposal, and what they need to know from you and what they don't need to know. And the experience also brings understanding of deeper nuances, including, again, your own limits, like how much you can do, what is realistic and what is not, is really essential. And one of the things your reviewer is looking for is, are you being realistic? It's such an important question. Especially inexperienced grant writers are unrealistically over-enthusiastic about how much they can accomplish. We just don't understand how much we can accomplish versus how difficult it actually is. And so we don't know those limits, and reviewers will pick up on that. And so we have to learn those deeper nuances and how to come across. So to enhance your grant writing process, I want to talk about a few ideas that you can work with now and practice that will help you on this path. Now, again, skills development takes a lot of time and practice, but here are some ideas to start that. One of the first is that really understanding that your readers are human beings. They can experience misunderstandings. They can experience confusion. They can experience overwhelm. So your goal, if you want to rise to this challenge, is to learn how they respond to your writing, to really learn those nuances of what each piece of writing that you put in does. Because so many inexperienced writers that I've worked with over the years, they just put facts on the page because they think, oh, well, the more facts and references I put, the more impressed they will be. And it's just, it's false. It's not true. You have to have only the right facts at the right time. Otherwise, you will just simply overwhelm or bore your reader. And that is the opposite of what you want. So it's a work on focusing your proposals down to be clear and compelling, simple for them to follow, and avoiding overcomplicating your writing. So many of us want to prove ourselves. Look at how complex my ideas are. Look at how intelligent and how much I know. No, that's not the point. We're not there to prove ourselves. I mean, we are in a way, but in a different way than that. We're there to prove that we can make a clear and compelling, cogent argument for why this project is the important one for them to support. We're not there to just prove how smart we are. The other thing we have to do is incorporate really clear and interesting ideas into our proposals. You know, proposals that don't have those great ideas, no matter how well written, just are kind of boring. They don't stand out, even if really well written technically. So we really have to have those great ideas underlying it, and not just technical ideas, but great ideas of how the technicalities of our work fit into the bigger picture of the field. That's really important too, and a lot of people skip that second step. So we have to ensure that we don't get lost in a fog of details and make our proposals more compelling to the audience. And so remember, it takes time, skill, and patience, and feedback from somebody who is knowledgeable and can tell you what you're doing and whether that's on track, or who can point out the nuances to you, is crucial for that improvement. I mentioned 4 years working with a mentor. It changed me around from a point where I had had a series of 6 major rejections in a row in my first 2 years as a faculty member, to then going on and getting the next 4 R01s I submitted to the National Institutes of Health. The next 4 R01 submissions I got funded on the first round of submission every time without rejection. So that's pretty awesome. And I want the same for you. I think the whole system is better if more of us are doing a better job and submitting less grants. One of the reasons the pay lines are so low is so many people are submitting so often and not very high quality submissions. If we all submitted higher quality, wouldn't it be nice if we did less of higher quality and pay lines were more like 1 in 5, but it required quality to still be that 1 out of the 5 to get there? Better situation for sure. So I encourage you to seek that structured guidance in your grant writing, to learn those nuances, to learn how to anticipate those unexpected waves that come and slam you down, and to be able to roll back up again, get back on your line, and get back going on the river, metaphorically, in your grant proposals. My team and I are here to help you. You can go to grantfoundry.com, where we'll give you personalized support. I mean, we're happy to talk to you about your situation, really find out what's going on for you, find out what's frustrating you and what's holding you back. And we'll do what we can to help you ease the process. We'll really do that complete analysis of your situation and suggest strategies. And some of those might involve programs that we have, but we're not there to just sell you something. We're there to truly help you figure out what's going on in your process and whether what we have is the right fit or not. I really want to help. I'm a 3rd generation scientist, and now I focus full time on helping researchers like you have more impact in your career with less of the sacrifice, less of the frustration, less of the icky stuff that makes these careers just so frustrating for many of us. So now I want to thank you for watching and really express my gratitude for your time and interest. And I'll leave you with this encouragement to just seek out training in both kayaking, if you're ever going to do that, and especially grant writing for really achieving your best success in those endeavors. This is Dr. Morgan Giddings, and I hope to see you at grantfoundry.com.